I'd like to welcome all of our friends and neighbors and colleagues and joining us in this regularly scheduled February 17th, 2020 council meeting. As you come in, there's a sign-in sheet on your desk, which will be to your right if you come in those doors. If you're present tonight as a guest, please sign in. May I please have a roll call vote? City Clerk.
Councilperson Bell. Brainer.
Here.
Beer. Here. Morrissey.
Here.
Sharp.
Here.
Stuchel.
Here.
Pratt.
Yes.
Sizer.
Here.
And Mayor Stockford.
Here.
We have 8 present.
Thank you, Katie. We will move on to approval of agenda. Does the city manager or any members of council have any changes they'd like to see made to the agenda tonight? Seeing no changes, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Support.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Sharp to approve the agenda as written. May I please have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
Councilperson Brainer.
Yes.
Beer.
Yes.
Morrissey.
Yes.
Sharp.
Yes.
Stuchel.
Yes.
Pratt.
Yes.
Sizer.
Yes.
And Mayor Stockford.
Yes.
Approved.
Thank you, Katie. We will move on to public comment on agenda items only. During this time, the podium will be open. I see we got a exceptionally full house tonight, so we're going to limit public comment to 3 minutes. Please state your name and address if you'd like, and make sure that your item of discussion has a direct tie to something present on the agenda. And also please understand per our council rules that we won't be interacting with a person while they are at the podium. Podium's now open.
Hi, my name is Margaret Youngs. I live at 70 North Norwood. Thank you for allowing me time to speak with you tonight. I'm a decades-long Hillsdale resident from Ward 3, and I have served in the Dawn Theater Governance Board since its inception. As you know, not only has the Dawn project already been awarded a significant grant from the state of Michigan, but also through a signed management agreement, the symbiotic relationship with the Kiefer House project ensures a profitable endeavor. I am here to state that I am fully committed to a successful renovation of the Dawn, and I am ready to help with securing additional funds not covered by the state grant. I have experience in fundraising. My career entails hosting guests from around the country to our community and securing contributions from them. I also successfully ran the Sauk Theater in Jonesville for many years. I'm even personally obliged to financially assisting with this project. I respectfully encourage Mayor Stockford and Council to join me in supporting this endeavor by approving the interdepartmental short-term loan between TIFA and the BPU. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Any more public comment?
Thank you for having this meeting tonight, and my name is Gary Wolfram, and I am a resident of 3 Corona Court in Hillsdale, and been here since 1989, and recall having my children going to see movies at the Dawn Theater, and I think this is a very exciting time where the Kiefer House, when I first got here, was basically a flop house. Is now being made into a boutique hotel by a company that has the ability to advertise it across the radius of 150 miles or whatever, and bring people in. And very excited about what's going on with the events, and I hope that you will see to approve this interlibrary professor, not interlibrary, but interdepartmental loan, and as it will just simply be a cash flow issue, and it make it so that our local contractors will be able to be paid even if there's a delay in when the grant comes in from the MEDC, and as you know, the Tax Increment Financing Authority has sufficient revenues that we know will be coming in. I think you've seen data on the over $100,000 a year that goes into TIFA, and this will actually probably give a slightly higher rate of return to the Board of Public Utilities than they would otherwise be getting. So I want to again thank you for having us on the agenda tonight, and look forward to sending my grandkids to see things at the Dawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wolfram. Podium still open. Any more public comment?
Penny Swan, Ward 4. I guess I'll be the lone voice of dissension on this loan. I request that you vote no. I put a poll up on my political page, and I had 76 votes. 68 said no, 8 said yes. I believe Folk Construction's well aware of the ramifications of making bids on anything that has grants associated to it in the timeline of getting paid. I also think this sets a very bad precedence for the city anytime we need work done that has a grant attached to it. Now, if you approve this, you're gonna set a precedence that that company gets a loan. Seems a little crazy. I had arguments with some discussions with some TIFA people on my political page saying it wasn't a loan, but now I've got everybody saying it is a loan. One person said the grant was a TIFA member, said the grant is dependent on getting this loan. When the grant was this summer, I didn't see any attachments to it or hear about any attachments, so there's some confusion there. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny.
Good evening, Council. My name's Andrew Gelzer, 3240 Half Moon Lake Road. I'm a member of the TIFA board. In our grant agreement with MEDC, which was reviewed and approved by Council in May of 2019, we, the TIFA board, committed to take responsibility for cost overruns to the tune of $400,000 to ensure the project would be completed, and the state investing $1.4 million was not wasting that. To meet that commitment, we are contractually obligated to set up some sort of mechanism for possible cost overruns. On hand, we have something like $250,000 earmarked for the Dawn, with another $120,000 coming in with the next tax collection. This leaves approximately $30,000 left to account for. We are unable by law to walk into a bank and take out a conventional loan. The only way we can raise funds ourselves, past our annual tax capture, is to issue and sell bonds. This is hypothetically a solution to this issue, but it would not be in a time frame conducive to the completion of this project. To honor a commitment made to MEDC, we have asked the BPU for a line of credit to answer possible cost overruns. Us asking that falls into their interdepartmental loan category, hence the confusion, I believe. They've approved a sum of $200,000. This request now falls for you to approve. I've been involved in this process since the purchase of the Dawn Theater and the Kiefer House. I'm here and available to answer any other questions you have when it comes up on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. Any more public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the podium. We'll move on to the consent agenda. In the consent agenda, we've got approval of bills, city claims February 6, 2020, BPU claims February 6, 2020, payroll of February 6, 2020. We've got city council minutes of February 3rd, joint work session of January 25th, 2020, finance minutes of January 13th, January 27th, and February 10th, a noise variance for Hillsdale College for the Taste of Manning event, Hillsdale College Taste of Manning right-of-way permit, and Hillsdale College Taste of Manning street use agreement. Is there any discussion on any of the items on the consent agenda? Councilman Morrissey.
I'm just pleased to see that the joint work session minutes of January 25th have been revised to reflect drivability, which is what we were talking about last time. So with that in mind, and if no one has any other comments, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Support.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Stuchel to approve the consent agenda. May I please have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
Councilperson Veer,
Yes.
Morrissey,
Yes.
Sharp,
Yes.
Stuchel,
Yes.
Pratt,
Yes.
Sizer,
Yes.
Mayor Stockford,
No?
and Councilperson Briner.
Yes.
We have 7-1 approved.
Thank you, Katie. We will move on to communications petitions. Item A is Day of Service event. Our college, our community, it says. It's a newsletter from the ISD. And Mr. Mackey, do you want to explain a little bit about what this is, please?
Well, I think the.
Oh, yeah, excuse me. I'm combining item A and item B. Will you explain a little bit about the Day of Service?
Sure.
Please.
Thank you, Mayor. So the Day of Service is an event scheduled for April 3rd in conjunction with Hillsdale College. The city was approached, and Mayor Stockford, by Chief Rogers, the Associate Dean of Min at the college. Last year, for the Day of Service, they had about 250 students that did projects around the city of Hillsdale. They saw tremendous positive activities come out of that and attitude and just making the community look better. So they approached us this year about even making that event even bigger. So they would like to, with their college students, look to the city for projects and for support with finding others who would like to volunteer and do projects within the community through our local service organizations and even down to the individual. If you're an individual and would like to help that day, we're seeking you. So the email address on there is to submit your information for either a project or to help with the project. So we're pretty excited about that, and we're hoping that we could drum up near 400 to 500 people to just go out and blitz the community and do some really nice things, pick up trash, paint, various things to make the community look good going into spring and summer.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey. Anybody have any questions about that? Want to thank Chief Rogers and definitely all the students who are going to take place in this. I think it's a really good thing for the community and one of those things that'll help us help the Hill and the town be good neighbors. So exciting stuff. Item B is the
Just the newsletter.
previously mentioned newsletter from the ISD. Item C, there's a skilled trades career fair that is being held at the Litchfield Regional Training Center. If anybody's never been over there, I encourage you to go visit Bill Nobles and get a tour of it. Something they've been working hard on for a long time, and we're grateful for Litchfield for being a leader in manufacturing in this area and also for the future. Item D, Michigan Career Quest South Flyer. Item E, census presentation. Clint Brugger? Mr. Brugger? Brugger? Mr. Brugger?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be able to speak to you all today about what I know to be an extremely important topic that's fast approaching, and that's the 2020 census. So take a step back in time to maybe your civics or your government class and remember that the framers of our Constitution wrote into it a required enumeration of our population to take place every 10 years. That's going to start happening March 12th of 2020. There's a reason why it's so important. Well, first, you know that that's the way that we get our fair representation in government, not only here at the council, but at the county level, the state level, and of course in Washington, D.C. In the 2010 census, Michigan was one of a handful of states that lost representation in Washington. And if those estimates are accurate for this census, that's likely to take place again. What we don't want to happen is for there to be a decline in population based on non-participation. There is likely a decrease in population happening in the state of Michigan due to a loss of industry, part of the Great Recession, although current figures are seeing some of that return to community. But also In addition to that representation in government, there are more than $15 billion of federal and state funds that get allocated to Michigan communities based upon population data. And again, we want our fair share. The census is the way that we can ensure that our tax dollars return home. And quite honestly, we only have the chance to do that every 10 years. Under current funding figures, approximately $1,800 per person per year is what's at stake. Those cover many different things from Medicare and Medicaid, but also infrastructure, our roads, education, pretty much all of those services that get provided to communities comes from population data. At $1,800 per person per year, we're stuck with that number for a decade, so it really translates to close to $18,000 per person. If you just do quick math on those that sit here, that's almost $200,000 if you didn't participate in the census. So I say all these things to really raise awareness, not only to you all, but to our community in general. Again, this is our only way as citizens to make sure that our tax dollars return back to where they belong. We don't want to miss people. Traditionally, those people who are missed are people of color, immigrants, undocumented individuals. The largest segment of the population that was undercounted in the 2010 census were young children, children under 5. Reason being, they'll oftentimes live in multiple households, maybe part of the time with mom, part of the time with dad, perhaps they're living with an extended family member. According to the law, wherever somebody is living on April 1st, 2020, whether permanent or temporary, family or friend, they should be counted at that address. So how do we make sure that everyone in our community understands that and follows that? So that grandma, if she happens to have her grandchildren staying with her on April 1st, is making sure that she counts them in those numbers. One thing that befuddles all of this time around is that the government has decided to go to an internet-first model. That doesn't mean internet only, but 80% of the population they're planning on enumerating online. Go back to the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. Remember when they opened up the website and it crashed, and then it crashed probably 3 or 4 times? They're planning on enumerating the entire population of the United States on a system that hasn't been tested. I got my fingers crossed that they've got their ducks in a row and everything goes as planned. But how do we get that message out to people that if you do get booted off the internet and can't participate, that it's extremely important that you try again? As I mentioned, it's an internet-first model, so people can participate by phone or by mail. The Census Bureau isn't actively giving out those surveys for us to sit on our desk or to have in our offices available for the public to come and pick them up. What's going to happen is that you're just going to have to wait, and eventually you'll get it in the mail. My understanding is that the way that they're going to invite us to participate is a postcard sent to us with the code on the front. We put that code into the internet, and that's our address verifier. I don't know about all of you, but when I get a postcard in the mail, it typically ends up in my trash. We really need to make sure that we're educating our population and our constituents on the importance of participating in the census because of all those reasons that I spoke of, and also because, quite honestly, it's the law. It's not a partisan thing. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. It's the American thing. This is the 23rd census that is going to be conducted in our nation's fine history, and we want to make sure that it's done the best possible in a format that's never been utilized before. So I call to you all to action and the rest of the community. I believe that the best way that we can ensure a complete count of the population in March and April of this year is word of mouth. Telling our friends and telling our friends' friends to tell them. The more that we can do to convince people of the importance of participating, not only for fair representation in government, but to make sure that your tax dollars are being used on you and not some other community, it's really important. I'll tell you that in this community, in this county, we've put together what's called the Complete Count Committee. Unfortunately, the County of Hillsdale did not receive any funds from the Census Bureau to do this kind of marketing work to make sure that people are participating. It's really up to us. And so this is a grassroots endeavor sparked by many nonprofits, the Ministerial Fellowship, some businesses, and local government. And so I have been out and about for the last 6 months kind of giving this presentation to anybody that will actually listen to me, because I believe that it really hasn't been something that's been promoted nationwide. Soon you'll start seeing those commercials on TV. Right now they're really trying to hire census workers. And I want them to be hired as well, but more so, I want people to understand the importance of the census, why it exists, and how it impacts all of our lives on a daily basis. And I ask all of you to continue to spread that word and do whatever you can as a council to ensure a complete count of the city of Hillsdale's population beginning March 12th this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brugger. Appreciate you coming out tonight. Is there any discussion about this item?
Mayor, if I may.
City Manager?
I think it's important also to mention, just kind of diving down into the weeds a little bit on this. This is important to us, really on a, at the high level that was mentioned, but at a lower level when you start looking at road funding and also monies we get in state revenue sharing from the state. Both of those components have a census data component to it. So for every person we have, if we say that our 8,300 population is a base, so everyone above that 8,300, we get an additional $80 into our Act 51 road funding monies we receive each year. You take that number and you multiply it by 1,000, that's $80,000 a year times 10 years, or 800,000. We have a lot of people left on the table, which I believe a lot of the college students. Our population, quite simply, is around that 8,000 to 8,300 in the city, but even those students, those 1,500 students that are up there on April 1st, need to be counted. And I know that they have some groups that are going up there to work with the college and the students to try to get that. So every person counts, as was mentioned, and now each person counts on the state revenue sharing, which we've taken a hit for in years past. So this is our chance to get some of that money coming back to our community. So Kelly LaPresto is on the committee, and the committee is really working hard to promote this.
May I say one more thing? In the 2010 census, Hillsdale County had about a 79% response rate. So that leaves 22 people out of 100 that decided not to participate in the last census. And 22 people is about $200,000 out of 100 people. So the math really adds up quickly. What we want is for the response rate to increase. Even if there's a natural decline in population, if we could have 100% participation rate in the census, I guarantee that there would probably likely be an increase in population over the 2010 data.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir. Any discussion about it? Councilman Veer?
So on the census, the primary focus is the address associated with the person filing. I was just kind of wondering, how would you count homeless people?
I can address that. So the Census Bureau has its own group that goes out and does work in regards to homeless individuals, and they do that prior to the count. So that's some of the things that their census workers are out doing right now, and they actually GPS even a tent location for that person, and then they have a crew that goes back out and actually enumerates them without them having to go anywhere. In addition to that, the Complete Count Committee has worked with Share the Warmth, the Drop-In Center, along with the Domestic Harmony, so some of those shelters that have some of that transient population. I also work for Community Action Agency, and we're very strongly committed to addressing the needs of homelessness. And so we will be asking every participant that comes through our door whether or not they've participated, and if not, we're going to help them.
And then, okay, because you said that basically starts March 12th, but it's actually where you're living on April 1st. What would be the final date of the year that?
You can participate in the census through June.
Through the end of June?
Yes, through the end of June. And there's been a decrease in census workers. So in the past, if you didn't participate, you got the knock on the door, until somebody showed up, until somebody answered the door and got counted. This year, you get one knock, which is also another troubling point in making sure that we have a complete count.
Go ahead, sir.
There was something in the packet that actually mentioned that in the state of Michigan, there's 3 or 4 centers, census centers, as opposed to back in 2010.
So
or more.
they went regional. Our nearest office is in Chicago. There's only 5 nationwide.
But I thought on the state level.
On the state level, they have offices that run everything, but in terms of like if you wanted to get in contact with somebody who could actually answer your question, the nearest office is in Chicago. And they're nearly impossible to get a hold of through personal experience. Thank you again. Appreciate
Yes, sir.
it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight and enlightening us on the importance of participating in the census. Any more discussion, questions? Seeing none, we will move on to Hillsdale County ISD millage presentation. Mr. Reel?
Hi, I'm Troy Reel. I'm the ISD superintendent, and thank you for having me here tonight. I'm here representing all of our local public schools and our Career Tech Center. Hillsdale ISD operates the Career Tech Center on behalf of the local school districts. A millage was passed in the 80s that was 1 mill that kind of jump-started the Career Tech Center in Hillsdale County. And right now we run 6 programs: construction trades, criminal justice and public safety, cybersecurity and digital forensic, engineering, drafting, and design technologies, health science 1, health science 2, and welding, brazing, and soldering. And we currently have 30% of our juniors and seniors in Hillsdale County that go to that center. Along with going there, they are able to also gain credits in the area of English language arts and math, depending on the programming that they need. The last 4 years, this budget has been run in the negative, about roughly $80,000. And so it's been cutting into that fund balance, which the fund balance basically is to help sustain the programs and make sure that all the equipment is up to date to be able to meet the needs of the students and keep things current for them. I gave you a flyer that kind of breaks down what we're asking for. In November, the superintendents asked me to go to my board and ask them to seek a millage of 0.6082 mills, which would cap out what Hillsdale County could actually draw from a millage would be 1.5 mills. The average household, if your house value was $105,600, the taxable value would be $52,800, and the tax increase would be $32.11 for a household that. What we are looking at and what the superintendents have been talking, and they've been talking for about 4 or 5 years before I came to this position, but they've been working with economic development partners, some of our business groups, and talking about some of the areas of needs that our community has. And one of the things they talked about was creating an opportunity for 9th and 10th grade students to jumpstart and get them excited and interested into some of those career opportunities and explore a little bit more of some opportunities that they could get. The other piece is work-based coordinator. Talking with the Economic Development Partners Group, they would like to have some internships go out and work in our communities, but they never know who to connect with at the school level. And what we talked as a collective group as a superintendent is we'd create a position that would be a one-point person for the whole county that would work collaboratively with our economic development partners and make sure that we can get kids placed into career opportunities and get some internships established. Sustaining our current programs because we find value in those programs. Increase our early middle college expansion. 2 years ago, Hillsdale County entered into an agreement with Jackson Community College and is working on early middle college, which allows your students to go an extra year of high school and obtain college credits at a junior college. So what we would like to do is expand. Right now we have kids that leave and they go over to the Jackson County. So if they're doing a career technology route in welding and they're going to go to Jackson Community College to get some credits towards that in their 5th year, instead of having them go to Jackson, we're looking at connecting with Litchfield and creating a site at Litchfield, so that way we can keep kids in Hillsdale County versus putting them in Jackson County in front of a whole different group of manufacturers. We want to try to keep these kids as local as possible and sustain our economy here. With the increase of creating programming for 9th and 10th grade students, there was some concern for transportation. Some of the counties around us offer a kickback to the local districts to pay for some of that transportation, and that's what we would look at as well with this millage. I did put a comparison of the other counties around us as a comparison to see how much that they generate. You can see that Branch County is over $5 million that they bring in for their Career Tech Center. Calhoun is over $5 million. Jackson County is over 10, as well as Lenawee. And you know, back in the 80s, before they had a cap on it, some of these counties went out for 5, 10, 15 mills and was able to pass it at that time, and those were capped at that time. Because Hillsdale at the time went out for 1 mill, we were capped at 1.5 was the max that we could ever draw or go out to our community and ask for. So on the back, there is a breakdown of the current budget. So you can see how that money is spent and where our revenues come in. One of the things I noticed coming into the county, I started out, I was up in Sheboygan as the superintendent up there. We had a Career Tech Center, but we didn't have a millage. And our local legislation under the Snyder years was wonderful for Career Tech Centers, but any Career Tech Center that held a millage wasn't able to tap into all the grants that were available from the state to grow programming, build programming, and sustain programming. So being a small an ISD with a very small millage, unfortunately, Hillsdale wasn't able to tap into those millions of dollars that was offered at that time. So I'm asking our legislators, as they look at legislation moving forward as well, to consider us little guys and say, let's make it equitable, because just because it's hard for us to compete to a Lenawee who has a higher millage, and we want to be able to offer our students the same opportunities that everybody else has around our area. Down below, there are some additional notes. The Perkins money, that's a Perkins grant. We are the CPIT coordinators for 3 counties, so we get a very small piece of that money, and that goes into career exploration for K-12, because that's one of the areas that our legislation wants school districts to promote. The most of that money goes on to Lenawee County and Jackson County. So, any questions that you might have?
I would just make a comment real quick. It's incredible when you look at these numbers that Branch County is smaller than Hillsdale County, and yet they're receiving so much funding for vocational education. Now, do you believe that that's had an impact on the amount of development? Because we've seen some pretty big manufacturing developments take place in the last few years over there.
It has. I mean, it adds to your workforce that you have out there. Mm-hmm. And what we know going in, when the superintendents talked about our budgets going into next year, they knew we were going to have to cut at least 2 programs from this to balance out their budget going into next year. So that's going to impact almost 80 students already in our county that would not have the opportunity to go into a skilled trade if we didn't go forward with the millage. So that's why we went for March 10th, because we have to have our budgets in place by June 30th, and if we can't get a millage to go through, we'll have to make the adjustments. The local school districts are going to have to figure out where they're going to fit these students back into their local districts. And a lot of these students, I'd say half of these students are students that are hands-on learners too. So they're not on that track for the college route. They want that skilled trade experience. And one of the staggering numbers that we just looked at our superintendent's meeting was we have a large population of our special ed students that attend the Career Tech Center and get a skilled trade, but we also have currently 50% of our students that are in special education not graduating with a diploma in Hillsdale County. And that's an area that we have to target as a superintendent group, going, how can we service these kids better to make sure that they have what they need to be able to go into and apply for a job as well. So,
Councilman Sharp?
Over the years, I've gone to Jackson's area up there for CNC programming. I went to Lenawee County for electrical stuff, taking up electrical wire and all that. And I also went over to Branch County's Career Center. They all have career centers, we don't. All we have is what you're offering over to Litchfield. It's too bad we don't have something out in Industrial Park.
We actually
We
do.
do, but not big enough.
Yeah,
Where those places are a lot bigger and they offer a lot more.
yeah.
And I know with Paragon and companies like that, they're just begging for people that have CNC programming experience and robotic.
Yep.
That's the field to go into. And Weldon, Martin Ria. I mean, those are our biggest employers in this county right now. And of course the college, I'm not, but that's a different skill there. But there's a demand for it.
There is.
And we've got to meet it, because if we don't, we're going to keep losing people here, just like the census. The population's going to leave, because the job skills, the jobs aren't here. So we need to make sure that we continue to develop too, and maybe we can't catch up with those other counties, but their career centers are awesome to go to.
I
Thank you.
agree.
Any more questions or comments for Mr. Reel? Councilman Morrissey?
My brother-in-law is one of the smartest guys I've ever met, but he hated school, and he became a welder. He started out as a welder. And he and my sister got married, and they moved to Alaska for the pipeline project, and they were able to amass enough money to create their own business. And so now they're hiring welders. So in other words, this is a way of going from here to there with a skilled trade like that. And it's very important to have training in this area. And I'm sure Councilman Stuchel agrees with me, because he has some employees himself.
I would love to see us eventually even get to the point where we could offer some adult ed programming through the Career Tech Center, because I think we're partnering with some of our manufacturers. We could actually get some community members that don't have the skill but want to get a job and be able to offer those opportunities of training as well. So those are areas that we're also looking at, saying, is there a way that we can expand that opportunity and support our community as well? So I thank you for the support. Any other questions?
No, I don't think so. I would just say, I've spent the last half decade working in workforce development, so if there's something I can do to help you on a personal level, then please don't hesitate to ask. I'd love to help with this project, so
Thank you very much.
thank you. Any more discussion, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, seeing none, we will move on. There's no introduction and adoption of ordinances, public hearing, so we'll move into old business. Tifa, request for internal loan. Mr. Mackey, do you want to present?
Sure. So this was something that was on the agenda last June, I believe, and it was taken off. I was on with two other loans, which were all approved by the Board of Public Utility. This one was postponed, and it was requested that by Councilman Stuchel about bringing it back up, knowing that the big construction on the project was about to kick off. So in talking to Councilman Stuchel and the chairman of TIFA, Chris Sumnar, I was requested to put this back on the agenda. I let Mayor Stockford know the first of the week that it was requested, and here it is for discussion.
Thank you, City Manager. Anything to add?
Nope.
Any discussion?
Well, listening to the public comments, seems to be some confusion as how this works. I sit on TIFA, so I'm more than willing to help answer questions, but I guess what I'd like to do is maybe have a dialogue with David, so I'm kind of asking questions that I had asked to help clarify. But first of all, one of the confusion was, this a loan or a line of credit? It's both, I guess, because what TIFA is asking for with BPU is to set aside $200,000 to use as needed if needed. So they may not need any of it, they may need all of it, and they need a portion of it. So once they start drawing from that, then it becomes a loan, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Second thing, the BPU money is excess revenue from BPU. So that money is going to be invested anyway. And so instead of investing it by loaning it to TIFA there's actually a higher interest rate going back to BPU, correct?
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And so basically what we have, and then there's probably some confusion between the Dawn and CL Enterprises with the Kiefer. The Dawn is a completely standalone project. It doesn't need the Kiefer. The Dawn is a local project, and this is the beauty of this project. It's a historical building. The Dawn's been with us for 100 years. It is a local contractor that's going to take local jobs, that's going to bring in local venues for music, for plays, that are for a jazz deal, or speaks, or banquets, all sorts of different things that we'll have locally right in our downtown. And to line up with the mayor's goals that he had, one of those is economic development. This is economic development. The number one goal that we had with the joint session was a vibrant downtown. This brings us a vibrant downtown. And so if there's any questions as far as risk, Tifa has money in their checking account now, but Tifa has money coming to it every spring and every winter for summer taxes and winter taxes. So that's going to continue to come in. Okay? Correct?
That's correct.
Anybody have any questions so far? Yes, sir.
This is gonna be like an inter-apartment loan like we did with the cemetery, with the fire truck, correct? Basically on the same interest rate?
The answer is yes. We have a policy in place, which is in the agenda for interdepartmental loans. The interest rate is actually a little bit better than what's in the packet, because our policy reads that it's the current federal funds rate. And when we brought this up this last June, that federal funds rate was at 2.5%, and it's now down to 1.75%. So I do have the updated statement of indebtedness in my office that I will get before a vote is on this
So
item.
my point is, this is not the first time this has
No,
happened.
no, it's
So
not.
I want to make sure the public's aware of this. This is not the first time.
True, it's not a precedence. And, you know, and if I may add, you have two different boards. You have the BPU board that's approved this, and you have the TIFA board who's approved this. And both those boards members are appointed by the mayor and approved by council. So again, this is local approval that comes along with this, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So everything about this project is local. And what we're going to be seeing is the money from the MEDC coming into this community, again, to a local contractor for local jobs, and those funds are going to get recycled through this community. And because the workers are going to walk down to the eatery to have breakfast, they're going to go to Pub and Grub for lunch. I mean, we're going to create jobs, they're going to buy a new pickup truck, who knows what they're going to do with it. But then we have this beautiful theater that who knows what it's. So you go to a banquet with your wife or your husband, and it gets a little long, let's go for a walk, and you're walking downtown Hillsdale. I mean, you're going to create the vibrancy that we're talking about for downtown Hillsdale. I try to find what the downside of this is, and there is none. I mean, if there is, I would like to know what it is, because I do not see this. Yes, sir.
Downside is what we're looking at right now,
That's
just sitting there.
exactly right.
All those years sitting there.
That's right.
This is an upside.
And, you know, I looked at it, Bruce, I'm glad you said that, because one thing I thought about was, you know, you walk down, you go to you see an attractive person, male or female, doesn't matter, but you see a nice-looking person, and they smile, and they're missing a tooth. You know, and it's like, and it's kind of like you're downtown. It's like right next to St. Anthony's. We have a hole there. We don't want holes in our downtown. And when it's all over, we're going to have a theater that's 100 years old that's, I mean, the three of us, I mean, we grew up here. That theater's always been there. So.
Any more discussion? Councilman Beer?
My comment on it would be that I think this is actually more of an insurance policy for the TIFA and the dawn depletion, and keeping us from possibly going down and having difficulties that the city experienced on Riplon, where the local contractor wasn't able to sustain the longevity of getting his funds, so it would keep the workers on site
Right.
paid,
I guess the way, if line of credit, way I look at it is you have a family budget and you have a vacation fund set aside and you're gonna take the family to Disney World. Then all of a sudden all of a sudden your insurance bill came in and you don't have the money. So you borrow it from that account, but you have your IRS tax rebate coming in a few weeks after your payment is due. So you basically take it out of here, you pay your interest, your refund check comes back, and you put that back into your vacation fund. So that's how this works.
Any more discussion? Councilman Briner?
So, my understanding, we're going to approve it, well, it may be approved. And if it is approved, we're just going to leave it there until we need it. We're not gonna initially take the 200,000 and then have a repayment? Or kind of like a cash flow injection, or we just? I guess I'm confused between whether it's a loan or a line of credit. Line of credit, usually you draw from, you use it and then you pay it back and you're in and out of it throughout
I'm talking to a banker. I'm not gonna answer that question because I honestly don't know.
It's a line of credit. It will not, and that's one of the potential advantages is that unlike a bond, which is not a reality here because the underwriting costs for a bond, which wouldn't be marketable because it's too small, are about $20,000, including legal fees at a minimum. So that's 10% of the borrowed amount. So a bond is not a reality. It's a line of credit. The advantage is you don't pay interest unless you use the money.
Right.
So it's not just, BPU is not going to be transferring $200,000 to the TIFA as soon as all the paperwork's signed. It's a typical multi-draw line of credit. It may or may not get access depending on the timing of the grant funds.
So if we do dip into it, say we need 100,000 to keep the project moving, we draw from the line, and then the grant money comes back in, are we paying that loan back, or are we just gonna leave that outstanding, that 100,000?
That I don't have, that's really a TIFA.
That's my thought is.
The discussion is, in the TIFA meeting, is that there is a payment plan in the packet. There's a 5-year payment plan for that. But the intent is to pay it back as quickly as possible. And when the project's done, it's paid back.
I guess to answer that, and Bonnie, correct me if I'm wrong, like with the ICE grant, once we knew that the project was the request for funds was approved at the state level, we advanced the money to keep things moving along. And then once we received that money back, we would pay the money we advanced off. And my understanding is that's how TIFA wants to operate this as well.
Okay, so if they draw 100,000 and then the grant money comes back, we're putting that back towards the loan. So therefore, the interest may not be that, or?
That is correct.
That's correct.
So do we need a 5-year term on a loan is my next question. Can we shorten that? If it's going to be in the approval recommendation, it states, though the loan has a term of 5 years, TIFA intends to pay off a loan upon completion of the project. So if we plan on paying it off at the end of the construction, can we do a 12-month or an 18-month term and have that paid back, is my understanding, because my understanding is this is a cash flow issue. We have enough, TIFA has enough funds to pay for the project itself, with the money that they have and the funds that they will receive. This is just kind of insurance if they need the money.
Correct.
So there's no risk involved whatsoever.
Correct.
I'm just wondering if we should shorten the term a little bit, kind of keep our hands on it a little bit more, and maybe save TIFA some money on interest as far as that goes. It's not good for the BPU because they lose interest, but it'd be a little bit more oversight, I guess, from us if we shorten the term on it. Which, you could always come back and say, hey, we have 100,000 outstanding at the end of construction. Can we term it out over 2 years or 3 years? The thing is, I don't want to see TIFA dump all their money into this project and then a year from now, next year, have somebody want to open up a new business downtown and want some kind of grant for the facade or something like that, facade, and not have the ability to do that. I guess, I don't know, I feel like if we shorten the term a little bit, because the sounds of it is, it's a cash flow issue, a line of credit or a loan, determining which is which. If it's a loan, and you draw upon it, and you don't want to pay it back with the funds that you're getting from the grant, and you want to term it out over 5 years, like, I'm fine with it, I guess, either way. It's confusing how I read it. Because I've heard people say it's a line of credit, and then I'm like, well, it's got a term of 5 years, it's technically a loan. So that's my take on it, I don't know how anybody else feels. But in this recommendation, it does state that they intend to pay it off at the end of construction. Well, the end of construction is gonna be September, October? So if they plan on having it paid off by then, why don't we do a 12-month term and have it used like a line of credit where it's in and out as needed with grant money? I know that's probably gonna be more work going back and forth for Bonnie. Sorry, Bonnie. But either way, I'm fine with it. If we want, like, another option is to take the loan, take the $200,000, put it into TIFA, and have a 5-year repayment on it. Either way, there's no risk involved. I guess it's just trying to figure out how to structure the loan.
I wasn't part of the structure,
So-
it's a cash flow issue.
Right. And I understand that.
I mean,
That's my thoughts. I'm okay with either way. If we want to take the initial loan, take the $200,000, deposit it in a TIFA, and let TIFA use that money as needed, then there's not back and forth between BPU and Bonnie, or the TIFA and BPU, which that might be a better case then. Just give you the $200,000, TIFA can
Just
use it
set
as
in a
needed
checking
throughout the
account.
project, and then
It's
pay it
there.
back over 5 years. I'm fine with that, because like I said, there's no risk involved whatsoever.
Yeah.
It gives you guys breathing room for the next 5
Right.
years to do projects other than this. So, that's, I guess, I don't know. Is it something we can talk about now and change? And,
Well, I don't know the structures of, that's your, I understand where you're coming from, but like I said, first of all, there's no risk.
Right.
Maybe that's another proposal, we come back later after that's all approved and we're moving forward, how the TIFA wants to do that. I don't want to speak for the board, I can't.
there's no risk, so
Andrew, is there anything you want to add? Is there something you know to this that I?
do you guys
Maybe.
see using the money? Like, do you plan on dipping into it? Because if so, I think we just take and do the $200,000, we give it to TIFA, and we say, pay it back over 5 years, and you guys use the funds as needed. And then there's
I've
not
never
back and forth in a
encountered,
line of credit with Bonnie and BPU, and that's less work for her.
It would. Never encountered a construction project that was under budget.
Right.
Speaking from personal experience, the the intent, at least of our request, was to take the full loan amount, $200,000, and at the conclusion of the project, repay it, as much of it, if not all of it,
Okay.
immediately. This is not something we want to be hanging around for 5 years if we can
Right.
avoid it. But if
Question.
necessary,
Question.
please.
So when this project is completed, what is the goal then? To sell the building?
No, sir.
Or Tifa's going to keep it for long-term?
What the contract says is that CL is going to manage it.
Okay.
The city, or the TIFA board, excuse me, is going to own it. CL is going to
Correct.
manage it after a set number of years.
Right.
Then CL is eventually going to have the opportunity to purchase it from TIFA, or at least they'll have the first right of refusal if the building is ever decided to be sold.
TIF is obligated to keep the building until the federal funds, the federal grant is closed by the federal government. And the federal government is currently 13 years behind in closing those grants. So Tifa will be owning the building indefinitely. Otherwise, they have to pay back the grant amount.
We've negotiated and agreed to a 35-year management plan with CL for the management of the Dawn. But we were retaining ownership of the property, which accomplishes the goals of rehabilitating the Dawn and getting it back on the tax rolls through the management agreement. Is that correct?
Okay. Councilman Zeiser.
I have some questions. If hypothetically CL doesn't execute on the construction at Kiefer and then that falls through, would they be held to this contract? And if not, what would we would have to presumably seek someone else as a concession?
Hypothetically, presumably.
But we have a Dawn
Yes.
Governance Board already in place.
Right.
So, and again, it's a TIF, you have a brand-new building in your downtown.
You're describing a worst-case scenario
Yeah.
where we have a brand-new rehabilitated theater
Yeah.
as opposed to a ruin.
Right. Can anyone educate me more on, if I understand correctly, what Councilmember Stuchel said, this money, the BPU excess funds, effectively they would go out the door anyhow to be invested elsewhere. Is that true? I think that I sort of somehow missed that in all of this. Can anyone elaborate on that, or?
That is correct. These monies are invested elsewhere, and typically they would be invested outside the city.
Okay. Now I'm gonna play stinker for a minute, which I'm assuming you guys all expected. I don't really generally for a long time didn't like the way that the TIFA system works. But we have a TIFA system in this city, and so as a matter of practicality, I've come to peace with that. Been able to make appointments to the board of some great people, and there was already great people on the board, very smart people. Most every one of them downtown business owner who has an interest in this community. So over the years, I've become more and more appreciative of the stuff that TIFA does. I really like that it captures tax revenue that normally the city wouldn't be able to get to keep, that would go to the county and to the state. So I do see some benefit to the system when it's used in such a way like to what Cindy Bezick did, put her restaurant up in that storefront instead of down in that basement. I think it's really good for the downtown. But I'm not on the TIFA board, so it's not my decision what to do with the TIFA money. But I don't think that government should spend tax money on theaters. I guess this is all irrelevant because, like I said, I'm not on the TIFA board, and I genuinely want to be supportive of what TIFA does, and I genuinely appreciate the members of the board. A lot of them are personal friends. The ones that aren't personal friends, I still have great respect for. When we were originally told that these buildings were going to be purchased, we were told that they were going to be purchased to be sold. And now, after a little bit after that, we were told, well, we're not going to sell the buildings, we're going to keep the Dawn. So, philosophically speaking, I have an issue with that. But I've made my peace with the idea that, okay, this is TIFA's deal, this is what TIFA's doing. But now, the ball's in our court to use money, which is Board of Public Utility money, to contribute to this project. That's something that I never wanted to see happen. I've been asking for years for the Board of Public Utilities pilot payment to be raised another percentage so we can use it on roads. And I've been told that there isn't operating money to do that, but here's a couple $100,000 that we have that could go someplace else. And it's really, 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 really difficult for me to talk to residents of this city and tell them that we're putting money into this project, the city, not the Tifa board, that the city is now extending a hand and putting money into this project that we're not putting into roads or fire trucks. And I do believe this sets a precedent. I know you guys might not agree with me, but I really, really feel like there's a difference between using an interdepartmental loan to buy something essential like a fire truck to save lives and to purchase an old dilapidated theater that's had, from what I can remember, 4 public owners on the market who have failed each time with it. So if I could draw a line and say, I'm supportive of what Tifa does, I want to see these projects succeed, but I don't personally want to provide this loan for the reasons I mentioned before, and nobody taking it personally and thinking that I'm trying to sabotage the loan or that this is some sort of power play, then this is pretty much where I stand on it.
I'd like to kind of
Councilman
answer
Stuchel.
maybe your question, maybe Mayor's question, but looking at Mr. Gelser standing there, he's a third-generation person from Hillsdale that's invested her money here. You look at John Saperi, he's a third generation, plus, well, he's got a son with a business downtown. You've got Chris Sumnar, Ron Show, you've got the Moore industry down here. There's a lot of people in this Tifa district that are long-term Hillsdale residents. These are people that have skin in the game. This is their money. They own these buildings downtown. They own they own property. They have their own money invested in this. I believe this council and I believe this city has the ability to walk and chew gum at the same time. We've got an excellent plan in place right now to do our roads, and we are doing our roads on a very good level, very high level. But if you let your downtown die, what's the point? We want a vibrant downtown. We had a wonderful meeting a couple Saturdays ago with everybody came together. The number one issue, a vibrant downtown. Because what we're talking about roads is how do we slow things and bring people into Hillsdale? So in not taking government money to build a theater, you know, there's all sorts of government monies out there. That's like saying, I'm not gonna take my Social Security check. We pay into this and we work hard to bring those monies back into our community. It's our money. And like I said, this money is gonna get recycled to this community. Everybody in this room is gonna touch some of that money some way, somehow. And it's ludicrous not to want to have that. So, I mean, I really believe we can do the roads, and this is our local BPU. This is our local community. This is our local contractor. Everything about this is local, everything. And CL Enterprises, you can even stretch it if you want to. They're friends of the college. They're partly our neighbor. They know the college. They've been involved with the college for quite some time. That's why they saw the Kiefer and they go, wow, they see the potential. The state sees the potential. This council needs to see the potential. To me, this is very simple. We just want a vibrant downtown, and we have the means to do it.
I don't want the discussion to devolve into what the benefit of having the Kiefer and the Dawn renovated would be, because I think I was clear that that's not what my concerns are at all. I've got other concerns, but I won't say those publicly. But I don't feel like that's what this discussion's about. I think everybody wants the exact same thing. I just think it's a matter of if these were projects that came to council and this was our initiative from the get-go, would council have voted to do this? I think they're great. I think the projects are great projects. I think it's gonna be awesome when they're done. But I keep hearing that the project's gonna happen whether we do this loan or not, that Tifa has the money to do it. So, Councilman Morrissey.
I have an incredibly trivial comment to make in the aftermath of all these other substantive comments. Second paragraph from the bottom of the resolution, there's a typo. It says loan shall bear, B-A-R-E. I believe that should be B-A-R. I think you want to change that. Just doesn't mean the same thing if you have the original language.
It's a loan after dark. It's a risque loan.
Give me a bar. This tree is
Daniel Boone, that's it.
Any more discussion? Councilman Briner.
I just look at it, how many people here own a house and have a loan on it? I know I do. I know most of us probably do. You still consider it your house. Now there's risk involved for the person that loaned you the money to buy it. In this scenario, though, there isn't a risk. Tifa isn't going away in the next 5 years. I don't think we can make it go away. So there is no risk in the interdepartment loan. And it's our money. It's everybody's money that lives here. It's local money. I don't see a risk in it. I would be willing to, just loan the money, take the 200, have Tifa take the 200,000, use it as they see through the project, and then let them pay it back over 5 years. It's considered a loan, not a line of credit. There's no back and forth for Bonnie throughout the project. I would hope you guys would be good stewards of the money. Ultimately, there's no risk. You're going to have to pay it back.
So is that a motion?
As far as what would happen, well, I have one more question. What would happen if Tifa defaulted on the loan?
I don't think it's possible.
Well, if TIFA defaulted on, TIFA has an annual stream of income just from the tax capture. When the Dawn is finished and it's available to be rented out for a wedding or some other purpose, it's going to generate some revenue. Now, obviously, there'll be some expenses involved, and if the real estate company that's involved in this proposed management agreement somehow doesn't come to fruition, then some other management entity can take care of it. But one would envision that the place could probably generate revenue from events. That money would go back into TIFA and could be utilized. But based on the numbers I've heard here of what the annual revenue of TIFA is, 2 years of annual revenue pays the loan off. 5 years, they're bringing in over twice what they need to pay if they're paying it $40,000 a year plus accrued interest. So the chances of a default are remote, but TIFA's not going away. TIFA is not a private entity that can file bankruptcy and say, sorry,
And if I may add, like I said, most of the people on the TIFA board are business owners. They understand exactly what you're saying. So they're going to want to save some money as well.
So I would make the motion that we do the loan. We disperse the funds and allow the 5-year payback and no pre-penalty payment if you guys pay it off early.
I'll second that.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Briner, seconded by Councilman Sharp, to do an interdepartmental loan in the amount of $200,000 to help cover any grant reimbursement delays for TIFA.
May I have a point of clarification on that? I think I lost the plot when we were discussing different financing mechanisms. Are we literally dispersing funds, or does it remain a line of credit?
I say we give it to them.
You're going to give them the money.
Instead of, otherwise, if you do it as a line of credit and you draw into it, and then say for some reason the grant funds take longer to get here, we want to keep the project moving, and we draw into it to 100,000, and then we get the grant funds back, we're going to have Bonnie go in, pay back BPU, and then it's a lot of back and forth if they're in it a couple of times, however many draws there is for the grant process.
Separate.
Usually it's done monthly, and there's when's the project going to kick off? In
April. I
April?
believe. April, yeah.
So you got 5-6 months back and forth. I don't see the risk in giving them 200,000.
The resolution says loan, so this is certainly a loan.
it's a
It's not a
loan.
line of credit.
Well, they're both loans. It's just a different terminology of.
There's no restriction on how it's repaid. They
Right.
can pay it back early,
Okay.
as was mentioned and as I typed up in the summary, based on my understanding.
But we would not, had it been a line of credit, we wouldn't have dispersed the funds. They would have been available, or is that not the case?
That is correct, but our loan interdepartmental policy is loan policy.
Okay.
As opposed.
So in keeping with the
Yes.
statutory.
Correct.
And then BPU's gain, I mean, as long as they keep out the 200,000, BPU's earning interest. It's a cost for Tifa, but then BPU's getting something out of it.
Well, let's have the vote, and I would just caution council on looking at government as a banking institution and not a steward of taxpayer money. May I have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
Okay, Councilperson Morrissey.
Yes.
Sharp.
Yes.
Stuchel.
Yes.
Pratt.
No.
Sizer.
No.
Mayor Stockford.
No.
Briner.
Yes.
And Beer.
Yes.
5-3, motion passes.
Thank you.
Resolution 3408.
Thank you, Katie. All right, let's move on to new business. Item A, domestic harmony contract. Do we have someone from domestic harmony here tonight? Really? Okay, all right, that's okay. The city has supported domestic harmony for more than 17 years. They provide victims of domestic violence and their children vital services such as crisis intervention, 24-hour supportive counseling and transportation, temporary shelter, housing placement assistance, information and referrals in legal and financial matters. These services are free of charge to those who reside in Hillsdale County. The attached document from Hannah Jordan, the Executive Director of Domestic Harmony, asks the city to continue their support for fiscal year 2020-21. Historically, the city's contribution has been between $5,000 and $6,000 annually. For the city's fiscal year 2019-2020, the contribution approved by council was $6,000. Staff recommends council approve the contract with Domestic Harmony for 2020-2021. Any discussion? Councilman Briner.
I'm probably not gonna be liked tonight, but that's all right. My thoughts on this, as I thought last year too, we increased it by 1,000. We weren't asked to, but we just did it on our own. The thing about Domestic Harmony, it's a nonprofit. There's a lot of nonprofits in Hillsdale. And my thought on this is, what if every nonprofit came to the city of Hillsdale and said, we want $5,000 for our budget? My other problem with this is, what are other townships donating? I see their letter in here where it says townships, other municipalities or whatever are donating in between $250 to $500 each year. But we go above and beyond at, like last year was $6,000. I don't know, I kind of vaguely looked at some financials on Domestic Harmony. It seems like they're doing well. They have funds available. We talk about being good stewards of the city's money. Are we doing that here? Again, it's nothing against Domestic Harmony. I think what they do and the service that they provide is great. My thing is with the amount of money that we're donating them each year, where others, I don't know how many people, like as far as, I like to see numbers. How many people from the city of Hillsdale do they service compared to the whole county? Is it just Hillsdale County or is it other people from different counties? Is my thoughts on this. At the level that we did last year, I mean, I don't think I would be in favor of it. I think we should be probably a lesser amount. Again, I would like to see numbers on how many people are actually from the city of Hillsdale, who they service compared to outside the city of Hillsdale, and then to see what other municipalities donate, and go from there before I would approve anything. But that's my thoughts.
Well, I can tell you, I was at Hillsdale Township's meeting last week, and they give $250 there. Hillsdale Township's got about 2,000 people. We've got, 8,500 roughly. So they give less than a 20th of what we give to Domestic Harmony. As far as this being a nonprofit, that's why this has always been categorized as a contract and not a donation. So, because I don't believe that it's legal for government to.
We should clarify that. And this is, if you go back a few years, it was a rather contentious issue in front of this council where somebody who no longer lives in this community came up and offered to pay the money himself if the council would deny the request. In general, government money cannot be given to a nonprofit entity or a charity. It's not permissible. State Representative Lloyd Heuser spearheaded legislation, it's now been 4 or 5 years ago, that authorized this type of donation specifically for this type of service. So, for instance, the Rotary or United Way or something like that could not legally come to this council and say, please give us $250. But based upon the perceived, and I think correctly perceived, need for shelters for domestic violence victims, that was the purpose of the legislation. They did used to play games with this contract, and there were a lot of municipalities that opted out of it at that time because they sort of understood it was semantics, but it's actually something that's authorized by statute now. The amount you contribute is certainly up to the council, but it also doesn't open the door for other nonprofits to come in and say, we'd like some too, because the council doesn't have the authority in those cases.
Councilman Sharp?
But just recently, we talked about the homeless. If Domestic Harmony closes up their doors and disappears, we're going to add to the numbers of the homeless because people are abused. They're going to move out. Where are they going to go? I've toured that place. I've had a few council members tour that place with us and see what they do. I'm sorry the lady's not here tonight. I don't understand why she's not here. Apparently she thought it was not a problem. They do deal with local people of the county, and outside the county. Because sometimes the abused want to get as far away as they can where they feel safe. They don't feel safe in Jackson or up in Detroit, they'll come down here. They don't close their doors to anybody.
Yeah.
They keep people there as long as they can. If it's the amount of money we're talking about is one thing, okay, let's give me a number. I think it's something we should continue to contribute to. It supports, this community needs it. There are domestic violence out there, and it continues. And the numbers don't go down.
Yeah. And just to add to that, Bruce, it also is part of public safety. I mean, this is it's a shelter. It does serve as public safety.
It's a resource for our police
Yeah,
too,
exactly.
because when they walk into situations where they need to get somebody out of a violent household, what are they supposed to do?
I mean, it
open the
costs a
door and
lot if we
say,
didn't have them.
so they have some place to take them.
Yep.
Councilman Zeiser.
To that end, do you think it would be possible for us to call the chief up and maybe he could speak about the department's use of this facility? I think it's been helpful in years past.
Yeah, I'm sure the chief wouldn't mind doing that.
And Chief, I don't have any specific question, but if you could just talk a little bit about how the department draws upon domestic harmony as a resource.
Sure. There
Thank
is
you,
no
sir.
other option when it comes to domestic violence victims where we have to remove a female, possibly with her children. There is no place for us to take them to ensure their safety. This is such a place, and we have not had an incident yet where they were not safe after we took them there. We work very closely with them. If they have any issues, they call us. There's not another option, a safe option. When you mentioned the public safety, when we take them there and drop them off and they get checked in, we know they're safe. And we go and continue the investigation or do what we have to do, but that's it. It's been here as long or longer than I have. We utilize it whenever we need. And I know it's something the city has always contributed to, supported. And my personal feeling is we need to, because I have no idea what we would do with this type of victim base if that did not exist. Or they ever told us, no, we can't.
So to your mind then, it really is a contract in the true sense. The public safety workers in this community are getting something out of this that helps them to effectively do their jobs and to make the community safer.
Absolutely, and why I'm referring to them as victims, and they do shelter other than just victims. It could be victims of something other than domestic violence, but they also receive services there. And many victims of domestic violence, there's a lot of psychology and victimization that goes in there. They know how to deal with this, how to, I don't want to say refocus their mindset, but it's very educational. It's just something we are not equipped to facilitate for this base of our public, of our community. We have to have a resource like this. I really do not know what we would do without it.
And I would also, just to go further than that, I've worked with them before to help, try to help them find employees on the workforce development side of it. And this isn't like a United Way situation where you've got some director that's making, $1 million while they're taking in charity. This is, these people are very blue, they make very blue, the couple paid positions there are very blue collar wages. They don't throw around money. They're very, very careful with it, and most all of it goes to keeping people safe. So.
And they're very dedicated to what they do.
Mm-hmm. Councilman Beer.
Would you say, Chief, that do you utilize them more now, like in 2019 than you did in 2015, or is it kind of the same?
We could utilize them heavily for a 2-month period and then not for 6 months. I can't answer that accurately.
You say probably stays pretty much consistent as far as.
I could tell you over the course of a year, a calendar year, it's probably pretty consistent, but we will go up from that. But the educational services that are out there, I think have improved in everything that the courts do once somebody is put in the system for adjudication for this, all the different programs they have. So over the years, the amount of education that goes out for this type of activity, I think, has greatly improved the awareness, and I think we probably use them a little less than we did 15 years ago.
Any more questions, comments?
I volunteered when I was going to college, and you see the lower income people coming in. They always said the people who had money would go to families.
Yeah.
And they even put the men up in a hotel if they were abused.
Yeah.
It's good.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pratt.
Yeah.
I move that we approve the contribution of $6,000.
Support.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Stuchel, to approve the contract with Domestic Harmony and to have our contribution for this year be $6,000. May I please have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
Councilperson Sharp?
Yes.
Stuchel?
Yes.
Pratt?
Yes.
Sizer?
Yes.
Mayor Stockford?
Yes.
Councilperson Briner?
No.
Beer?
Yes.
And Morrissey?
Yes.
It was 7-1 approved.
Thank you, Katie. We'll move on to new business to item B, MSCPA amendments of bylaws. Dave?
We're going to let Mr. MacArthur take this.
Oh, Chris. Come on down.
He's got to earn his money tonight.
Yeah.
Look at the book he's got.
I know.
As far as the amendments or the bylaw changes, they're just restating they moved from Litchfield to Coldwater, and also just cleaning up some items that the attorney, MSCPA attorney, saw as far as public notices stating the time, date, and meeting places throughout the bylaws. So just housekeeping is pretty much all that is.
Any questions for Mr. MacArthur? Okay. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the MSCPA's bylaw amendments as noted.
Support.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Beer, seconded by Councilman Stuchel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Chris. We'll move on to item C, BPU SSOE Detailed Engineering and Design Services for Phase 1 Voltage Upgrade.
All right, so I'm here to ask and present to you guys the plan that the BPU's come up with to spend some of their electrical money over the next 8 years. So just kind of giving you an overview, if I can get this thing to work maybe. There we go. System characteristics, just kind of giving you a broad overview of what our system looks like. We do have a 28 megawatt peak load for the city of Hillsdale. We do have two 5.7 megawatt generators located out at the plant, so we can provide in an emergency situation approximately a little under half of our system load if necessary. And also we have two substations that interconnect at 46 kV or 1,000 volts with ITC out at Moore Road substation. So that's where we're fed from, loops around to the power plant substation. So onto substations and those that I was just talking about, out at the power plant substation we do have two good-sized transformers, 25 MVA or roughly 25 to 28 megawatts are what those can transform if needed. So that takes our 46, our transmission voltage, and drops it down to our current 13,200 volt that we utilize within our system. Also, we do have 4 feeders that run at the 13.2 volts, 13.2 kilovolts anyhow. From that also, which is the old voltage in town, which is what we call the 4160 or 4.16 kV, that also feeds off of that 13.2. So 4160 is where the city started. Okay, we upgraded to 13.2. The higher the voltage, the better your efficiency for the electricity to be transferred, less energy lost that way. And I would say also that 13.2, which doesn't seem like it, but is also safer than the 4160 for other means. So, and I'll get to that as we move on here. So, we also have another substation, larger substation, which is out in the industrial park. That is just one transformer out there that feeds one circuit, and that's just provides power to the industrial park itself. We call that feeder 15. So moving on to the distribution system, we have 5 13.2 circuits. We have 7 13.2 to 4160 substations throughout the city as well. So not only do we have the 2 main substations, now we have another 7 internally inside the city as well that are our older substations that provide 4160 voltage to the system. So a total of 11 4160 circuits. This also allows us to switch loads, so if one substation were to go down or we lose power on one side of town, we can switch that load over to these other substations to provide power where necessary for periods of time while we fix any issues. So moving on to existing conditions, the system certainly has provided acceptable levels of capacity and reliability, but the 4160 system or that equipment is old and reaching the end of the useful life. So I've listed here just our others, the subs throughout the city. We have anywhere the 1960s, 1970s when they put quite a bit of money into the system. We do have the Sharp Street sub still at 1949, so some of that equipment's pretty old and still in use. So on a yearly basis, we do oil samples on these transformers and regulators just to see the condition. That kind of tells you if the inside or the insulation is breaking down internally in that transformer. We do have a couple of them that they like us to test more regularly than others, and none of them at dangerous levels, but they also want us to make aware, especially that Sharp Street sub. That transformer there does not like a lot of load put on it for extended period of time. So it's kind of where that is. So in the beginning, a year and a half ago, you talk about infrastructure upgrade. We're always worried, and talking about roads or maybe the water mains or water towers, whatever that is, the electrical system also is part of that. There has not been a substantial amount put into the system since the 1970s was the last time when a lot of these substations were put in for growth. So you're dealing with a lot of older equipment that maybe we can't service anymore. Maybe some of these breakers you can't get parts for, or you're buying or finding used breakers to put in there. So it becomes an issue from a reliability standpoint and also a safety standpoint. So I explained, 4160, because the voltage is so much lower, you have to fuse those lines a lot higher. We've actually had instances where the lines come down and maybe don't blow the fuse like they're supposed to, or that breaker won't trip because the current doesn't get high enough to blow that fuse. So the higher, 13.2 usually isn't an issue. Once it hits the ground, it blows the fuse and it's dead. So we have had, and just recently a truck backed in, nobody was in it, thank God, but hit a line, came down on top of the truck and stayed live until the guys got there to pull the fuse to let, get the power off that line. So that was on the old 4160. So what we recommend, the board and the staff, is to proceed with the city's voltage upgrade project, which will upgrade the remaining 4160 circuits to 13.2 circuits, and also add 4 circuits to the industrial substation. So what this does is replaces the outdated equipment with more up-to-date and reliable equipment. It will also add distribution feeders to the industrial substation, and it splits the distribution load between the substations more evenly. This will also allow us to have the switching capabilities to allow the feeders to be fed from either side, so we can either go from the industrial side or the power plant side. Right now, everything comes from the power plant side, so we call it the Indian Trail, but you'll see out there on Bernard Street where the bike path starts, a whole bunch of power lines coming up through. That's where the whole city is fed from there. We do have a few circuits going out the other way, but mainly up the Indian Trail. So you think of catastrophic event. Thank God we haven't had any, but if it wipes that out, I mean it's going to take a while for us to get power back. So if you split that up, certainly throws that, half of them we'd be able to feed from one side or the other. So cost. Obviously, nothing is cheap. So what this is an 8-year plan. So that would allow us to modify the industrial substation with additional feeders, convert the remaining feeders, circuits 4, 5, and 6 to 13.2. Also convert remaining 4160 feeder circuits to 13.2 operation. Construct recloser stations and upgrade the 13.2 feeder circuits. And also construct 4 13.2 feeder circuits from the power plant substation to interface with the industrial substation. So all for a grand total of $5,548,000. So we look over at the funding side. The money is there for capital projects. We do have $6,591 set aside. That is in part due to the planning of this infrastructure upgrade for many, many years. People, or I'll say past boards, past staff has really seen this coming and knew that it was going to need to happen. So I would just say from past planning, we're at the stage where we can upgrade and have the money for this upgrade. So in summary, this will help the BPU staff maintain an exceptional reliability for our customers. We have had national recognition from APPA in excellence and reliability. That would help us to maintain that. It will update equipment that is end of useful life. It will make the system more safe and robust with additional switching options during outage situations. And it will follow through on the strategic planning of the BPU board to update and maintain the electric system to serve our customers with safe and reliable power. And it will not raise rates to fund this project, Bruce. I promise. This project, Bruce.
Only Bruce's.
He keeps a close eye on me, so that's why I only sit with him. So with that said, that is our 8-year project. That's what we plan to do for the next 8 years in the voltage upgrade project. is to upgrade the infrastructure in town and to upgrade the system. So I say that leading into the SSOE detailed engineering design services for phase 1 of that voltage project for an amount not to exceed $300,000. That has been approved by the BPU board, and that's what staff recommends. So.
Very good. Any questions for Chris? Councilman Beer.
Chris, you were saying that going from 14.6 to 13.2 is you don't lose as much power in the line?
So yes, it's a little bit more efficient. There is a little bit more money to grab there, not I'll say enough to pay for this, right? The efficiency isn't going to go up a substantial amount. So right now we average between 6 and 8% system loss. So that's loss through transformers, that's loss through lines, that's just unused power that we pay for that may not get sold just due to voltage situations. Now they did run some numbers on that, and they would estimate if everything was in a perfect condition, you might grab $40,000 a year back from raising this efficient, the transformers up to the higher voltage. So not a significant amount when you're talking with, $5.5 million, but doing our part to be more efficient for sure.
I think with the efficiencies, and then also you said it's a lot safer than the 14.6 as far as.
Yeah, the 4160 is, like I said, it in my opinion, is a little bit more dangerous than the 13.2 just from that aspect that the fuses or the breakers don't trip as easily as the 13.2 does if you run into a situation.
Any more questions? Councilman Stuchel?
As an engineer, I got to ask the question. And I've done a lot of projects, but I'm not an electrical guy.
Okay.
But to me, the $300,000 sounds a little high for this. Because I'm not electrical, so this is like plug and go.
Okay.
To me. So walk me, they've got their hours broken out.
Yes.
That was all that makes sense to me. It just seems a little bit on the high side.
Understood. So SSOE is the firm that we've used. So they walked us through the first phase of this. So we spent the last year and a half going through, talking to staff. They know our system well, okay? So that $300,000 or that not to exceed is going to be billed on a time and material basis. They don't feel that it will take this, but they wanted to throw enough in there, okay? With that being said, we did not bid this out just because we have a relationship with them. They know our system. We'd have to pay somebody else to learn our system and to do all that background work.
And are they, I saw it's got documents, but I'm taking they're going to give you the phases of how you're going to do this.
That
phase
is correct.
1, phase 2.
So first phase, and we did back, the phase 1 is going to be listed out here, the industrial substation upgrade improvement. So that's going to be all the blueprints, that's going to be everything out there at the industrial sub. That's probably one of the bigger projects. Also designing for our guys out in the field, those transformer changeovers and the line changeovers out in the field, and really coming up with that plan of how to do that without affecting other systems and other parts of the system, if that makes sense. Because we have to take a strategic approach at this, because we don't want to cut ourselves off.
Right.
You're
not going to lose service in the process.
Exactly. You may lose service, and you'll be aware of it long enough for us to switch over the transformers, but that would be about it. Yep.
Okay.
Any more questions? Thank you for your presentation, Chris.
Thank you.
I'd entertain a motion, unless there's any more conversation, I'd entertain a motion awarding the design services for phase 1 of the voltage upgrade project to SSOE in the amount not to exceed $300,000.
Support.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Beer, seconded by Councilman Briner. May I please have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
Councilperson Stuchel?
Yes.
Pratt?
Yes.
Sizer?
Yes.
Mayor Stockford?
Yes.
Briner?
Yes.
Beer?
Yes.
Morrissey? And Sharp?
Yes.
All approved.
Very good. Thank you, Katie. Okay, we will move on. There's no proclamations. Got one appointment tonight to the local advisory committee, which is the Dial-A-Ride Committee. And that's Kimberly Gary, and she was a recommendation from the Dial-A-Ride drivers. And she also uses Dial-A-Ride, so I think she'll be a great addition to it. I'd entertain a motion, well, unless you guys have any questions, her bio's in here, I'd entertain a motion to appoint Kimberly A. Gary to the Dial-A-Ride Local Advisory Board. I'll move. Motion on the floor made by myself, seconded by Councilman Veer to appoint Kimberly A. Gary to the Dial-A-Ride Advisory Committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Welcome to the board, Kimberly. Okay, we've got nothing else in miscellaneous, so we'll move to general public comment. During this time, the podium will be open. You can have 5 minutes to speak on anything you like, and the rules are the same. Please limit your comment to 5 minutes. Please limit your trips to 1 to the podium. And please understand per our council rules that there will be no correspondence between council and the person while they are at the podium. Podium's now open.
Good evening. I'm Sue Reed. I reside at 93 North Norwood. I visited you folks last June with a complaint about 86 North Norwood and many, many problems with that neighbor. I have contacted the police and the fire department both on the non-emergent numbers over the last few months, as have our neighbors. We've had several visits from Councilman Sharp. He's very well aware of this situation. I was really feeling like in January, I'm a pretty patient person, that we saw citations being delivered by Hillsdale's Finest. We thought things were moving forward. The latest insult is a wood-burning stove right in the driveway, and with the metal chimney bursting smoke all over our neighborhood, it's like we live in a constant campfire. The fire department said that was not acceptable, it was not okay. We do have rules on the books that state that it can't be there. All he did was take the chimney and move it from the front of the barn to the back of the barn on the same property. And he hasn't addressed any of the other citations that have been coming to him. I would really love to find out how I get some follow-up on this. I know that you know, and the police know, and the fire department knows that he's doing things he's not supposed to, but it's not improving. So I would really like some more effort looked into this, because it's unsafe. It's pretty scary when he's burning that wood burner and the smoke is everywhere. All the buildings are way too close to each other, and the fire could erupt and burn up both of his neighbors on either side. It's terrible. So, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming out tonight. Any more public comment?
Margaret Youngs again. I too live on North Norwood, same block as the Reeds. This neighbor, something needs to be done about this neighbor. They're nice enough people, but the fires are going at all hours of the night, and there are other issues with the neighborhood and the projects that he has going constantly in his yard. I just wanted to support Sue's complaint. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Any more public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the podium. Move into city manager's report. Dave?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep my comments brief. I just, for most of you who saw Mr. Kirby's high school government class from Hillsdale High School was in the back earlier. Here for extra credit to see government, local government in action. I actually had an opportunity to do a presentation for his class about a week ago, and they had a lot of good questions, and he encouraged them, and he was here with them tonight, so I just wanted to make everyone aware of that class and the excitement about getting our youth involved in government. As was mentioned earlier, the census is very important for our community. It could mean a lot of more dollars into our roads, into our city government to help with our council goals and other things. So as we progress towards April 1st, if I would just encourage everyone to share that importance, and we'll be talking about it more as that comes up. again, as I said, on that committee, Kelly LaPresto serves on it, but they have a couple groups that are going to focus on the college, on the homeless. I mean, it even will go down to those in the local, our local prison or our local jail. So if they're in jail on April 1st, they can be counted. And they have folks who will be doing that. So they're really working to get an accurate count for the benefit of our county and our city. The Day of Service event, again, just want to reiterate, last year they had over 250 students. I know Mayor Stockford's been heavily involved in this, and we're hoping we can get 400 to 500. Imagine what we can do with 400 to 500 students, residents, service club members. We could wipe out a ton of what-ifs around the community going into summer to make our community just stand out that much more for our guests and for our community members. So keep that in mind, and we'll be talking about that as the weeks go by. The Public Service Committee has met. We've been talking about the leaf collection issue, as well as Councilman Bell is working on the right-of-way plantings issue that has been brought to the committee, and probably within the next couple weeks we'll have another meeting to dial down on something to present to the council moving forward on leaf collection, as well as with the right-of-way planting changes. So just wanted to inform you and the public that those things are being worked on, as well as the big thing right now is our budget preparation, kind of and using the council goals as our roadmap to what's delineating our budget as we put it together and move forward to be presented to council and come up through our discussions. So we'll have those meetings with council here in the near future with the department heads like we have in the past 4 or 5 years since I've been here, so that council can ask questions directly to the department heads, and we can talk about the strategy, about the goals and how we're accomplishing them for you and for the residents. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions for Dave? So the rural communities won that fight to get the inmates counted as
Yes.
as members of the community that they were incarcerated in, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Good. I saw something about that. The big cities wanted to make sure if any other people were locked up somewhere else, they should still be counted as Detroit residents or interesting. Any questions for Dave? Thank you, Dave. All right, we'll move into council comment. Anybody got anything interesting? Councilman Sharp.
To my favorite two ladies, I am working on it. The police department's working on it. Alan's working on it. It's a daily battle. But I hear you. I smell it too. I can smell that wood burner. Well, just one step at a time. We got to follow procedures. But when you call me, I call the city manager. I pass it on to Dave. We also have Mr. Zeiser over here. He's third ward council person too. Please feel free to call him too. Yeah. I know you do, but please, a little more pressure from Bill too, and maybe we're working on it. It's not fair to you guys. It's really not fair what you're going through with this gentleman and the condition of what's there. And code enforcement will do what they can do. So thank you. I'm working on it as best I can do.
Is it illegal to have a wood burner in town?
No, you are not. In fact, I sent the councilman the citation that states that you cannot.
Is that an outside one or an
Yeah,
inside?
I think you can have
Outside
one
you cannot
inside.
have.
Right, okay.
Absolutely not.
We even talked to the fire department, and the fire department said it's not even,
It's not legal.
not legal at all.
That's up to them. That's their department.
Well,
I'm just doing a follow-up on it. I promise you, I'm going to continue to follow up on it.
He's thumbing his nose, that's for sure.
yeah.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it sounds like you can write citations, but you just can't go over onto somebody's property and rip it off. And so I'm sure they would if they could, though. Councilman Briner.
Just to explain my no vote for domestic harmony, again, I'm not against the services that they provide or anything like that, so don't hold it against me. I just think that it should be a fair contribution from all communities in Hillsdale and everybody that uses the services. You know, like you said, the township, $250, how far does that really go? So I would just entice maybe other townships, cities to look at donating a fair share instead of leaving it on the backs of the people of the city of Hillsdale. So
To add to that, how about county commissioners?
that would be a good one to start with.
Yes. Here's my shot at county commissioners.
Good job. Any more council comment? Motion to adjourn? Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Beer to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? This meeting's adjourned.